Rick, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to go into all this stuff. You got 5 shops, towing company, you've branched out to other businesses, you were in the Coast Guard, a lot of stuff to go into, but catch me up. How did you get into auto repair?
It was a woman.
Oh,
it was a woman. Yeah. You know, it's funny. So, my mom was a bartender, and she ran a restaurant and a bar, and, she was like the belle of the ball every day. Right. Yeah. And so I always figured I would go into the hospitality industry. And I did right out of high school. I worked for numerous hotels and restaurants, and, we have a lot of great restaurants in the Portland metro area. And I raced motocross, and I met a girl and fell in love, and I wanted to marry her. And when I went to ask her dad for permission, he said no. And I said, why? He's like, what do you have to offer? You're just you're a waiter and a bartender or something, right?
Yeah.
And so
I cut really, deep, huh?
It did.
That's
hurt me, because I my big dream up to that point was to own my own restaurant, bar,
Yeah.
And so I was like, wow. And I was in the Honda dealership picking up parts for motocross race.
Yeah.
And there's a help wanted sign, parts guy. And so I was like, man, I got to get a real job. And so I did. I literally went to work in this little parts, and my buddies worked on the car side. We had Honda cars and Honda motorcycles. Right.
Yeah.
And I think within 2 weeks, I went from the parts guy at the motorcycle store to the parts guy at the car side of things. So, and in this dealership, there was the parts department, and then there was the service department, and there was just literally a door, and so you could hear everything that was going on. Now, in the hospitality industry, they train us a lot on customer service, making the experience amazing, all to get some dinner ticket to be $100, which is big money back in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
And when I listened to these guys sell auto repair, it was atrocious. It was terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, just, hey, calling about your Honda, need $6,000. Well, you can fix it or not. Click. Wow.
Yeah.
So me being me, I'm like, I can do better than that.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I ended up,
So it was
it was a woman. It was absolutely a woman. Funny, I'm not really a car guy. I'm not a technician.
Yeah.
I didn't race cars. Nothing like that.
But you were a motorcycle guy.
Motorcycle guy all my life, up until my really bad road racing crash. I rode motorcycles from the time I was 12 to the time I was 29.
Jay here road races.
Oh, yeah, you did.
Yeah,
you still
he does.
Oh,
I
you
just
still
raced
do.
this past weekend.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Good for
Hey,
you.
Jay's only 29 too.
I'm still learning.
Where are your scars? Where are your scars? I think we're all learning.
This thumb's about half an inch lower than the other. Yeah,
Jay was in a race and some dude banged into him. Did he break your brake handle off? Your
I was
clutch
going
handle?
into turn 1 at Barber in Alabama, and he hit me on the right side and broke my brake lever. So going into turn 1, I go for my brakes, and there's no lever.
It's just hanging there.
And so, and I'm near the front. Yeah. So behind us, there were 2 waves, and I'm starting to grab and look for it. And I realize it's folded all the way up on the fairing. So I grab it and start pulling it back to go to the brakes. Well, now I'm getting bikes going by.
Sure.
I find it, go to the brakes, and keep going. Just ended up taking second place.
Really? So you just kept, right? You didn't end up in the outfield?
He's bad to the bone.
Oh, man.
I
would have been scrubbing speed.
Put one little finger on it.
Hold on to it. I did let it go a couple times. Had to go re-find it. But anyway.
He kept hearing that in Tom Cruise, Top Gun, he kept hearing Kenny Loggins singing Highway to the Danger Zone the whole time as he's buzzing through there.
I guess we're going.
Well, it's great to hear that you're a Honda guy. You're a Ride Red guy. So
yeah. I've read and it's funny because I've done them all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Motocross was all Hondas until one of the dealerships we took over when I went to work for a different car dealership, and they made me a general manager of a Suzuki, Kawasaki dealer. We didn't have Honda. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? That's terrible, right? And so I'm like, I got to ride this yellow thing. Oh my God.
So you rode Suzuki, huh?
I rode a Kawasaki first. And that didn't feel right. It was like Goldilocks and the different.
It's funny how they all feel different.
Yeah, they do. And so then I switched to the Suzuki. The RM250 was probably my last motocross bike because
it ripped.
Because we had road bikes.
Yeah.
And I was like, ooh, what's this GSXR thing over here? This is pretty
Gixxer, huh?
The Gixxer's 750.
Yeah. So I went to the course with a 600 because I wasn't ready to get up to the big boy stuff yet.
Yeah.
But I had an R1 for the street, which I got to be Captain Chaos, right?
You were a hooligan, okay.
Oh yeah. And then I actually took a ZX9 and then I put motocross bars on it. And
Dang.
I lived across the street from this hospital.
I respect you so much more now.
So he's a Kawasaki.
So the hospital at night was empty, right?
Yeah.
And so I was able to take the ZX9 and just do a wheelie and then do a California stoppie and then, try to stand on it and squish down the tank. Like you could just beat the living.
You're a stunter.
It was so much fun, And
Dude,
so,
this guy,
so then you show up like on Friday
You
night
are
and
so
know
much
what
more
you do.
attractive to me right now.
We're going to talk all about motorcycles.
I know,
on this
right?
one.
Yeah.
They're gonna be like,
So-
are they ever gonna talk about car bear?
I know, right?
That's way too boring. All right, keep going.
Yeah. So road racing got to be so cool, because you go from motocross where you've got to pack everything up. You've got to get up there. Practice is a pain. You go to road courses, like you can ride your bike, and then of course you get to the point where you got to have your racing bike too. It's all wired up and everything. And I got to back up a little bit because how I got there I left that Honda dealer actually, and I went to a different Honda dealer, big group, Dickhand Auto Group in Vancouver, Washington, and they wanted to buy Pro Caliber Motorsports, and they came to me as this parts kid, and they said, "Hey, don't you know the owner of Pro Caliber?" I said, "Well, they sponsor me in motocross. So can you get us like a invitation to meet? We heard they want to sell, and we'd like to buy them." And I was like 23 years old, 24 years old. Sure. They give me stickers for my bike and sell me parts at 10 over,
Yeah.
So I introduced them and, they made a deal. And I was like, wow. And so then they came back and they said, "Hey, you were instrumental in this. We really appreciate it. Do you want to work there?" Well, yes, I do. And I said, "I'd like to take over the parts department." They said, "No, got a good parts manager, but the service department really needs help." I'm like, "Okay, all right. I don't know anything about doing this, but whatever." And the general manager, I still operate under this advice today. I said, I don't know what to do with these guys. They're different culture. They just don't move. Like nothing's going to happen here. And then finally, Marty looked at me and he goes, "Listen," he goes, "you just got to cut cancer and just rebuild it with your own culture and everything will be fine." And I was terrified. But I literally went in there one day. I had a nice talk. I didn't have any confidence at that time, but I was being very soft and everything. And they just weren't buying it. So I fired them all. We had no service techs at all. And they
In
came
one day, you
in
fired
one
them
day.
all.
One day, yep. And so, of course, my general manager comes in and goes, "What did you do?" I'm like, "I did what you told me to do, man." Like,
cut off the cancer.
He goes, "Yeah." He said, "Well, now what's your plan?" I said, "Well, we didn't talk beyond that. Like, yeah, I just have a plan." So, as it goes, we hired more techs and we built everything up. I made no money in this place, none, but I got to play with everything. That was part of the deal. I got four-wheelers to go to the sand dunes. I got snowmobiles, which I had never touched in my life, which I thought those were the dumbest thing on the face of the planet at the time. The road bike, they gave me a road bike to ride around the street, but not for the track because the track, I'm going to destroy my thing,
Yeah.
and then dirt bikes. And then we teamed up with a guy named Ray DeMarini who made baseball bats at the time. And then Ray DeMarini wanted to get into making handlebars. And then he formed the Suzuki Pro Circuit motocross team. And Suzuki would send me all the bikes and I would outfit them with all the pipes and all the handlebars. And we'd send them to Supercross around the country. And we did that for a couple of years.
Wow.
So it was a cool experience. It was a lot of fun. I made no money, but I had just the best time ever. But it exposed me to a lot of different people and a lot of different motorsports, right? Because now at my age, like I have 4 snowmobiles in my garage. They went from being the dumbest thing ever to being, these things are amazing.
Yep.
Still love my 4-wheelers in the sand. We have sand dunes in Oregon, that kind of thing. So it was a good time. But I realized I wasn't going to make any money and I needed to get back to the car game. And so I asked them when we opened up a new Toyota dealership up in Longview, Washington, I said, "Man, I'd really like to have that store, brand spanking new store." And I went up there as the service manager and ran that for a little while.
Did you fire everybody?
No, I got to, but I did get to hire everybody. So it's funny thinking back on it. As I'm talking about it now, I'm thinking back. That's like the strength that I am in my business. Like I'm the hiring guy.
Oh,
right?
really?
Yeah. And so everything that I've touched along the way, that's always been the way of it. We've always gone in and just put our own people in. I guess my real weakness is not being able to convert the people that are there, right? I always have to like replace them, So anyway, that's sort of the little bit of journey for
How you got
dealership
in.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And then,
walk us. I'm sorry.
Sure.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so you're at the dealership.
Yeah.
What was that moment where you decided, hey, maybe I'm going to move in and do my own thing?
Yeah, it wasn't quite. So that was the Toyota dealership and it was a little bit of a drive and I was very cocky and very arrogant at this point because I think I was 26 or 27 years old, and they made me a fixed operations manager. Most of my peers were in their 50s, and I was newly single. My first wife and I had divorced, and a lot went to my head, and I did some things that I just shouldn't have, and it was time for me to leave. And so when I left, I actually went to Seattle because I hadn't learned my lesson yet. I was still very, very arrogant, but I took a position in Seattle with Honda and Toyota of Seattle. And I was over both stores, and this is the first big operation I ever ran. I think I lied about my abilities, I'm pretty sure, to get in, So I had 24 Toyota technicians. I want to say 30 Honda technicians, lots of service advisors, big operation, lots going on. And I went in there thinking I would just do my own thing. Well, I am one guy. And remember, I go in and I clean house, right?
Yeah.
You're not cleaning 50 people. It's not happening.
Mm-mm.
And they have the culture of where when the Seattle Mariners play, the shop goes quiet. Darndest thing I'd ever heard. They won't run air guns. They wouldn't, it just stopped. And the whole day while the game was going on, and I was just frustrated. I was fit to be tied. I was like, I can't fix this. There's just no way. They wanted more efficiency. They wanted more productivity. They wanted somebody to go in and try to beat some people up. It wasn't for me. So a BMW dealership from Portland called me and said, "Hey, you want to come home?" I said, "Yep, I will." And so I went to BMW, Cooney BMW, and they're in Portland, Oregon. And I ran the drive there, 4 advisors, and I think we had about 25 technicians. And back then, this is like 2002, 2003, we're doing $1 million a month on the BMW drive. Yep. Most of it was me. I had a couple guys behind me, but I built a pretty good reputation. But again, started cleaning out people behind me. People on the back end started getting upset. The parts and service director was super happy with me until they replaced him. And then the next parts and service director came in, and he's like, "Yeah, I hear you cause problems." Wow, I got this reputation of causing problems. Okay, so I could feel there was tension. There was a lot of things that they wanted me to change, and it's kind of my way or the highway kind of thing. And I decided, I think I need to do this on my own. So I started searching, and this little tiny shop in Hillsboro, Oregon came up for sale in this 2-bay gas station, and it was called Accurate Auto. So I bought it with the name as this technician, and he's been a part of my life. The whole journey, which is funny. So, he started this little shop, and I bought it. And like I was telling Jay, when I took this over, remember, I hadn't really been a tech. I hadn't really spent much time. When when you're in car dealerships, you're always up front. It's always business, right? I didn't understand where the timing belt goes or how it routes or any of that stuff. Mm-hmm. So when I bought this thing, I literally put a stool in between the 2 cars with my 2 technicians and said, "All right, tell me what you're going to do." And that's how I learned everything I learned about, the independent side. So that's how I got to independence.
So walk us through buying that first shop. Because, hey, 2 bays, I mean, you heard about it. You were like, okay, I'm going to try to figure this out. It was just you going into it?
Just me. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm like, $300,000. Okay. Well, how much money does it make? I think he was showing he was making like $10,000 a month.
This is just you asking him questions?
Pretty much, I don't even remember if I asked for P&Ls back then, to be honest with you. I had a lawyer help me with some stuff and figured, okay, I just did, guerrilla math. Can I make this work? Well, yeah, sure. But I don't think I figured in, like my capital costs. I think I sold everything. I had a motorhome and a, trailer for all my toys. I sold every toy I had. I bought a junky little Chevy S10 pickup, manual, everything.
Yeah.
So you had no car payments, beans and rice kind of thing. Living the dream. I went from having a $100,000 a year job with a BMW every 3 months to driving this crappy vehicle and 45 minutes of traffic to this little tiny 2-bay gas station and running these guys that just smoke and drink all the time. It was something else. I'll never forget. They tried to talk me out of it before I pulled the trigger. And the general manager took me for lunch, and he goes, "Well, just drive me by the place." I said, "Okay." And he goes, "That's the place you're buying?" I go, "Yep, that's the place I'm buying." It's real quiet for about 3 blocks. And he goes, "You'll be back." That stuck with me. Because there were days when you're sitting on that stool and it's hot as heck outside and work ain't going good. And you're like, man, I had it so good. But I'll never forget him saying, "You'll be back. You'll call it."
And that line right there is what kept you going.
Kept me going. Yep. And I remember I was telling Jay, I got my second store. It wasn't even 24 months. It was like 18 months in. Second store opportunity came up. And now what I know now, I wasn't ready, but it was that thing inside of me that you'll be back. Because I knew I needed to get back to at least that income level. Like you think you've taken this massive step backwards, right? So inside I'm like, no, I can't take that. So I got to get the step up. I've got to get ahead of this. Some time to time, I would have to go show up at BMW and pick up a part or something, you want to hang your head high, not low.
Yeah.
So that's, when store 2 came up, I'm like, let's go, let's get it. I wasn't ready financially. I wasn't ready emotionally. I wasn't ready. I mean, it's a good thing I didn't have kids back then because I was at work at 6 a.m. to get home till 8 p.m, driving back and forth to both stores.
Yeah.
So it was a juggle.
Wow.
Yeah. You learn the hard way, but I think you need to learn the hard way. There were so many lessons I learned. I think I learned more in the first 3 years. I mean, I've learned a lot, don't get me wrong, but I remember learning. So it's that sip from the fire hose. The fire hose is so much all at once. And then it starts to finally refine itself. I feel like every 5 years, like, okay, I can take a little bit less information all at one time.
Yeah.
So
going back to opening that first store.
Yeah.
It's your baby. You're committed. Yeah. First day. What was going through your head when you walked? Like, this is your thing now.
Yeah. For anybody that's ever bought a shop, usually there's like a clause in there that says the owner's going to stay on for like 30 days for smooth transition, right? It's never smooth because that guy does not want to be in his shop where you're changing everything.
Yeah.
It's super detrimental. Like it doesn't work. But I was just trying to honor an agreement. Remember, I've never done this before. So I got this guy in here and I'm like, well, I'm going to move this and I'm going to move that. Oh, you can't do that. And let me tell you why. So like the first 5 days felt like Groundhog Day. Like every single day I would try to do something different. And no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. No. And I think it was Friday. He and I both agreed that, I'll make my payments and I'll figure this out. I would rather not have the old owner as a guide than have him there. I'd rather figure it out on my own. Even if I make mistakes, because that's okay. I'm going to learn from those mistakes. Even though I got to make them 3 times. It's okay.
Yeah, that's all right.
Right.
Long time to learn, but learn really well.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. So you got going, new owner's out. It's finally your thing.
Yeah.
And you kind of moved into this because you were causing rifts in those other places, and now you're starting your own thing.
Mm-hmm.
What did you, in that first year, what did you learn?
That I get to decide. I get to decide how it goes and how much we do. And that was it was exactly what I needed, right? Even if the financial reward wasn't there, like right out of the gate, it was very clear to me early on, like how much of a need there was. I also knew right away that what I purchased was so small for my world that I needed. I think I had a plan to do store 2 in like the first 30 or 60 days.
Oh, wow.
Really, really quickly.
You're just this is too small. You're going to do something.
That chip on your shoulder.
Maybe that was. I just remember it's like you're trying to drink to quench a thirst that never gets quenched.
Yeah.
And you're trying to like map it out in your head and you're like, there's just no way. There's, I could do this 4 or 5 times over. It's funny. We always had a joke, and I've been in a lot of coaching groups. Like from day one, I've always been a big coaching guy, and I committed to like 7 stores. I don't know where 7 came from. Couldn't tell you. Still not at 7.
Yeah.
Don't know if I'll ever get to 7, but that was what my mindset was way back then.
Wow. So first store, were you positive in the first store? Did you find out, hey, we need to change our finance? Like, were you doing well?
Yeah. We were. But what I didn't understand quarterly taxes yet. And so we didn't do quarterlies. And so I got to the end of the year and I was feeling pretty good because I had this pile of money. And then they sent me this crazy bill because they wanted a bunch of it. And I was kind of freaking out and upset about that. So then my whole plan had to change again. I'm like, well, man, I don't know if 7's going to cut it. Like, I need a lot more of these.
At that rate. Yeah. Because you're thinking about the incremental. I've got to multiply that.
We had nothing to write off at the time. We didn't own the building. There was so many things. I didn't understand tax. There was nothing I knew. I knew how to sell auto repair. That was it.
What kind of revenue did you get that first store to?
When I bought it, it was doing $550. And by the first by the end of that year, let me back up. I got to go. So I bought it in September, October. Okay. So the first year we were at 750 from 550, basically.
Okay.
So the first year. Second year we went to, I want to say we went to like 850 because I wasn't the advisor anymore because we had a second store and I trained somebody else. And it sort of lived in that 900 mark for a while because I went through, then I had to learn how to start training service advisors. So doing and training, very different, right? Yeah. And I was still in the mindset of, if you're going to mess this up, I'm going to push you off to the side. I'm going to show you how I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to bring you back in, that sort of thing. That only works for a little while too, as you well know.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But we had gotten the second store. And we got that one by accident too. I think all of my stores were accidental. We got a phone call from this lady in Beaverton, and she's like, we've had this store for a really long time, and my husband's quite old, and I've been asking him to retire, but he wouldn't retire, and we just lost our technicians, and, could you help us? Could I just send a car over to her? Sure, yeah. I think one of my mechanics had known his mechanic. That's how the connection was made. So we helped her out with a few cars. And then she said that she wanted to sell, and they said they wanted $200,000. And I went, yeah, I've heard this song before. I don't know if I want to do that or not, And so I actually said no. And then I think a few weeks went by, and she called and she said, my husband's had a stroke. He was working on a Fiero, and he was like in the back, upside down, laying on his back. And, so something bad happened. He had to go. He lived, but they had 5 or 6 cars in their bays. I wasn't going to haul them all over. So we just went over there and we worked on them. We finished them up, let them bill them out. And then they said, hey, we want to sell. So I just called my lawyer and said, let's value this thing. This time I'm like, take me through how that works. How do we figure out what they're really, really worth, And so I did that process. I don't think that I fully understood it, but I understood enough to where I had some comfort. And I think we paid like $160,000 for this shop. It was same deal. It was doing, $40,000 a month, $45,000, something like that.
Much bigger building though?
It was a much bigger space, leased out, no real estate, that sort of thing. Been around about the same amount of time as the last one I bought 5-6 years, just that kind of thing. But I felt better because I was paying half, right?
Yeah.
Now, knowing what I know now, I probably should have given him $50,000, but that's okay.
You're learning.
I'm learning. I'm paying for my education. Yes. Yeah. And I actually, the more I did between 2005 and 2012, when I got store number 3, I actually started doing diligence. I started chasing really crappy stores. Not because I wanted to buy them, because I wanted to understand this diligence thing. I wanted to understand what other shops really, really looked like.
Oh,
so I went and I'd sit down with lots of owners, and I don't think I really wasted their time. I think that I tried to help them understand as much as I understood. But I mean, I would always just do the numbers, and be like, man. And every time it makes you feel horrible. Oh, we're asking $200,000. And the reality is, yeah, you'd be lucky if you get $50,000 for this thing, right? Because I wanted to recognize the real deal. When I was thinking about this earlier, I was thinking about, I probably looked at like 50 shops in that 7-year period. And I would say 2 of them I should have bought. Like they were really good. They were really strong. And I remember thinking to myself, maybe I'm missing something. Like I didn't have the confidence in myself because I'd looked at so many crappy shops, right? How could this one be that great? But there was 2 that got away. But I still, when I drive by them today, I'm like, I should have had that.
But that same wisdom that kept you out of the 48 bad deals would have had to be compromised for you to get those 2 good ones.
It would. Yeah. It was funny. Yeah. I was like, when am I going to stop doing this and just buy something, So, that's how we got to store 3.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so there was a long period of time in between those.
In between the 2, yes, there was.
How much revenue did you have? So store 2 was doing, it sounds like 40-50K a month. Would you end up getting it to before you went to store 3?
Yeah, both of them were, I had both of them sitting at $1 million a year. They just kept they consistently put out $1 million a year, right? Okay. So and that felt pretty good, especially when your lifestyle doesn't, go beyond that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was just my wife and I at the time. She did leave the dealership finally, and she was my full-time bookkeeper. So our overhead was low. We lived modestly. We had lots of money, no kids.
And you'd had those 2 shops, both leased, and didn't own real estate.
Correct.
And both of you fresh out of the dealership.
Mm-hmm.
And how many years in you think you were?
That point, we were with just the 2 stores. Oh, by the time I bought store 3,
that was right before you bought 3.
Right before I bought 3, that was 7 years in.
7 years in.
Yep.
Had you gotten your income back to where you wanted it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and then some.
And now, a quick word from our sponsors. Establishing trust is the key to keeping customers. AutoVital's easy-to-use digital vehicle inspections ensure clear communication to build that trust, which increases your average repair order to drive growth. Establish a consistent inspection process and keep your customers coming back year after year with AutoVitals. Reach them on the web at autovitals.com/inspect. Again, that's autovitals.com/inspect. Keep your customers coming back. And now back to the episode.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So you got the 2 stores cranking. Even though they're not doing a lot, you were getting a lot of net out of them.
Yeah, I was.
And you were doing coaching this entire time.
Yes, different coaching groups.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Please continue with store 3.
Yeah, so store 3. And mind you, I was in the Coast Guard, this whole time too, right? So I was doing weekends, doing that because I could, right? I didn't have any
life
children.
was boring.
Yeah, right. It's just
suburban life.
Just, doing little water patrols and stuff like that. So, store 3, we were looking for a location in another area, and somebody called me one day and said, "Hey, are you looking? I know you're looking for like Tualatin." I said, "Yeah, we got something in Lake Oswego." I was like, "Ooh, Lake Oswego, that's really hard to get into. It's fairly affluent. They don't like auto repair there." And I was like, "Yeah, let's go take a look at it." So I'll never forget this one. This guy's been in this building since like 1978, and this broker meets me out front, and I'm like, "Is this guy selling?" And he's like, "Well, let's just go take a walk, and I'll show you the space." He didn't answer my question directly. I was like, "Oh, that's strange." So we go walking through, and it's a repair shop, and guys working in the corner, and there's a guy up at the front counter, and not much going on, but it's an old shop. Finally, the guy gets out, walks out, and he goes, "Can I help you guys?" And the broker steps in really quickly. He's like, "Well, hey, remember me? I represent the building." And the guy's like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, I haven't decided what I'm doing yet." I was like, "Something's up here.
Oh.
This is weird, man." And so I kind of stepped forward and I introduced myself. I go, "Are you selling?" He goes, "No." I said, "Are you retiring?" He goes, "No." And I said, "Okay." I said, "I think there's been a big misunderstanding. Really sorry to waste your time. We'll get out of your hair." I take about 3 steps out of the way, and he goes, "Well, for the right price, I would." "Oh, okay. So, well, here's my card, and, figure out what you want for a price and call me." I said, "Okay." I get outside the broker. I go, "Tell me what's going on." "Well, I represent the owner of the building, and we bought this building, and we gave him, notice to increase his rent, and he just refuses to pay us. He refuses to leave. He refuses to do anything."
Oh my gosh.
You're going to love this. So I'm like, "Okay, all right. Well, yeah, I don't think I want to be in the middle of this, but whatever." So then the guy calls me, the owner of the shop calls me, and I said, "That was awkward. Like, what's going on?" And so he told me that, "Yeah, I've been paying $2,500 a month rent for this 5,000 square foot space. I've been here since 1978. This new guy comes in, he wants to charge me $6,000 a month." And I was like, "Well, I mean, it is market, So he goes, "Well, statute of limitations is going to wear out on that." I was like, "I don't know what that is." So
no, it doesn't actually.
I know. It gets so much better. So I finally said, "Well, tell me what you want for the business." And he said, I think he wanted $400,000 for the business. So I was like, "Great, send me all your stuff." And, it takes a little bit of time, but you get all your stuff. And he was worth like 50 grand tops, me being generous. Like, there was just no income, right? No income at all. And he had such reduced rent. Like, by the time I added back rent, there was just no way. And so that becomes the hard part of diligence. That's when you have to tell them the truth, and you have to do it in a way that you're not this snake in the grass. You're not this jerk, right? And so whatever I do, I always, I have, brokers that I know, and, "Hey, will you double check this for me? Just give me a second set of eyes on it." No, you're right, Rick. That's what it is." Okay. So I called him up and said, "Hey, why don't you meet me and, we'll sit down at a restaurant." I went over everything, and, he kind of held his head down low, and he goes, "I knew we weren't making much money." I said, "Yeah." And so I think we actually tentatively agreed to do, I was going to give him like $100,000, right? Just some walking away money, because I found value in the space. I found value in the fact that it's an underserved area. Very, very difficult to get. There's only like 3 independents in that town, and it's the most wealthy, affluent town. So I thought, well, that's probably worth it to me. That's when my education came in, because there was a UCC filing from the IRS from a tax lien on all of his stuff. And as soon as I started, I got a call from the IRS, and they said, "Hey, are you engaging?" Because I had checked on banking institutions or something that triggered this. And had
you moved in?
Nope.
Okay.
No, I had not. In fact, By the time the IRS agent got to me, because he wouldn't take their calls, he would just ignore them. Again, he believed in statute of limitations. He believed that if it went 10 years, that they couldn't collect and that was going to be it. Now I know why the landlord wanted him out. The IRS was coming to chain the doors. They were days away from chaining the doors. And so they wanted to see all of my paperwork and everything that I had done for valuation, because he owed $250,000, $300,000. And so I'm trying to give this guy $100,000.
Wow.
My lawyer's like, run. Don't
touch this deal.
Don't touch this deal. So I have a little bit of a history of being a little naive. And I went, nope, I'm going to gut it out. I'm going to go talk to him. And so I went to the IRS and I said, so what's got to happen here? They said, we are going to seize all the assets and we're going to sell them. And then whatever we don't get, we're going to collect on him. And so the landlord called me and he said, are you doing this deal with him? I said, well, I don't quite know what I'm doing. But I go, I think they're going to chain your building up. He goes, that's the notice I got. So now the landlord and I are aligned. Now I know why they put a listing on. They had to get somebody else in that space, right? But the IRS can still take the assets inside of it. They can't take the building.
Yeah.
But if those assets are inside of the building, they can take that.
They can take the assets that belong to that tenant.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the landlord and I, he goes, here's the deal. He goes, if you can make a deal, I will give you free rent space on the space behind for all the assets to get it out of there. And lawyers are like, yeah, you can probably do that. We didn't move it from the premise, right? Because that's illegal. But it's still on site. We just move it that'll keep the space open. And then we took our agreement to the IRS and they're like, okay, we would see that, but we still want to collect on assets. We're like, okay. The assets were worth like $22,000, right? And
But
so
you had moved all the assets.
I physically went in there. As soon as they said it was okay to move them into the space next door.
Who's the they that said it's okay?
IRS. The IRS, they said, we just wanted to move them. It was the landlord who had asked, can I just move them to another space in the same building? And they said, yeah, as long as it's secured. So they secured it. And then.
Okay, so those assets that were being moved, were they owned by the landlord?
No, they were owned by the shop owner.
Really? And the IRS let you move them?
They because it was on the same physical site. We just went from one bay to another.
I understand that.
Right. Yeah.
You were moving them for the purpose of getting to have them for free.
No, I wasn't going to get them for free. But I bought them from the IRS to settle his tax debt.
Okay.
So I paid the IRS $23,000.
So were you moving them just so that the operator, the old guy, wouldn't take them?
So they wouldn't chain that facility closed and I could operate and the landlord could collect rent in that space. So the asset.
I still am not following.
Yeah.
Are you getting this,
Jay? It was wild, man. I was like,
so
is this
there's
okay?
another
Can
building
I
on
do
the
this?
property.
So it's a strip. So it's this long strip, and there's like all these suites.
Okay.
And so it's all one address, but there's suite A,
Suite A,
B,
B,
suite. Yeah. So we moved everything from suite A to suite B.
Okay.
The assets. So
All
they
right.
didn't leave the premise. They just got moved out of suite A, and it got leased to me instead of him.
What got leased to you, A or B?
A got leased to me.
So then they tell him he has to get out.
Yep.
He goes to move out. He leaves the equipment.
Yeah.
You move the equipment.
Yeah.
The IRS then says, give us the $100,000.
Well, I got it settled for 23, but yes. Because we had to have an individual evaluation on all this old crappy equipment that I didn't even want, right?
So you ended up never doing the deal with the old guy.
He never got a dime.
And weren't you worried about the equipment being changed up in Suite A if you're operating out of it?
I was not, because it was old and antiquated, and I knew I could outfit the whole thing for $50,000 and just move on with my life. But I knew that there was going to be a debt that I would have to pay on it.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason you moved it to Suite B was just in case they showed up.
Correct.
Keep it
so
from
that,
being unchanged.
Keep it from, yep, I did not want them to chain the door. And then that was the deal I needed to keep with the landlord too.
And so they would go and chain
Suite
that. They would chain Suite
They did
B
put a padlock on Suite B.
to keep that equipment protected.
Yep. They took an inventory list. They checked it all off. They put a value on it, and they padlocked it until I paid for it. And then they came and took their padlock off.
And the old man, you ended up never doing the deal.
Never paid him a dime. He showed back up and asked for a job. And then I said, yeah, you're a good technician. He goes, oh, but I don't want to show up. He wanted like a no-show job to like compensate him for me getting such a smoking deal.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I was like,
you were like, no, it's not
I am not going to prison for you, bud.
Statute limitations, sir.
I should have said
Should have
that.
said
I should have said that. Yep.
Oh,
And then he came back and asked for a job for his wife for the same thing. And I said, no, no means no. Yeah. Yeah.
wow.
So, yeah. That's how I ended up with Store 3.
Man, you
Dang.
learned-
Did it make money?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So it's funny when you talk about ROI, that's been my biggest bang ever, right? Because we came out of the gate first year and I want to say we did 900 grand first year
Okay.
out of the gate. And by that time I'd learned how to train some service advisors and move around a little bit, that kind of thing. And I went through the ringer. When you bring a government agency in, you learn some stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think that it falsely made me think that I was smarter than I am, right? Because I was feeling pretty good at that point. So now we've got 3 stores, right? And all my zeal and my confidence, I decided, I'm pretty good at this. I'm going to buy a shipyard. It's a great idea.
Are you kidding me?
Coast
No.
Guard.
So in the Coast Guard, I knew
It's
that
better.
all of our 47-foot motor lifeboats went down to Reedsport, Oregon, and they got outfitted. And, the average ticket on these things is about 500 grand. And you got a couple shipbuilders and you got a millwright. And, I've been in for 10 years. I know a few people, I know the lingo. Let's give this a whirl. It was for sale for $2 million. And I went down and negotiated, got down to like 1.8, something like that. And the guy had been running the thing forever and ever and ever. So I thought, well, absentee, it's got to be good. I know what I'm doing. So I bought this thing on contract, gave him 25% down, come to think of it. And, the first couple of bids on boats, they got a little soft. And the third bid didn't go our way. I was like, what's going on here? All the bids come to us. Like, why is this happening? Right? Now, there's another shipyard in town, but they only work on big stuff, big container ships. Some of the deadliest catch ships were there. They've been retrofitted, that kind of thing. And I noticed they were moving in this brand new fancy facility. And then after I lost the second bid on a boat, I went, uh-oh, I ain't got cash flow. What's going on? And lo and behold, the other shipbuilder got a grant, $4.4 million grant from the state of Oregon. So then I didn't realize grants come with all kinds of commitments. And so they had to commit to hiring so many people. So they had never bid on any of the government jobs before because they're a little less dollars, kind of like we work on, gross profit dollars per hour.
Yeah.
They're a little less gross profit dollars per hour compared to these big corporations. But they got to employ all these people. So now they're taking everything. I mean, just taking it all in. And the guy I bought the shipyard, he knew it.
That's why he sold.
That's why he sold. Never disclosed it. I mean, I thought I was just going down for the count, And the only reason we knew this is because my attorney ended up hiring a private detective. It's like, how did you go from doing, $3-4 million a year in revenue to go doing nothing? Like something's up. So he hired a private detective and just put him in this little tiny town. Guy's in the Elks. He's, at his local bar, and he'd just been going on and on and on about how all this was going to happen and what his plan was. And so he never disclosed it. And so once we had this, we kind of went back to him and said, hey, you kind of pulled the wool over my guy's eye, because he was suing me and I was going to sue him. And
He was suing you for non-payment?
Yep. Non-payment.
The owner finance?
Owner finance. Yep. So it cost me $600,000 to get out of it.
In addition to the initial or the
Yeah.
total?
Yeah. I think between the down of what I gave him and then what we settled for, it was a little over 600. I want to say it's like 625, something like that. So I got spanked pretty hard, got humbled. I was a fool and I was parted with my money. And it was a big learning lesson, It was absentee, obviously. So I was driving 3 hours down. I'd stay a day and I'd pop back up and go run my auto repair shop. So I was saying to Jay earlier, I was like, I could probably talk a lot to a lot of different people about staying in your lane.
Oh, yeah.
I'm probably one of the few shop fix guys who've gone out and done. I know people have done some other things, but I can intelligently talk about it, and I've done it again. Like I bought a towing company too, which is a little closer to our business. I wouldn't recommend stepping too far out of your lane. So I needed that. It was a dark time in my life.
Really?
It was really dark. It was the first time I remember feeling like a failure. You go from riding high and getting these deals done and having lots of cash, and then you separate from your partner and you go off and you do this thing and you think, I've made terrible mistakes. I was reading the book Shoe Dog at the time, and it helped me a ton. It did. I thought, Well, my problems are nothing compared to Phil Knight's, you know, and I was running and I was listening. So the good thing is I got thin, I got healthy, right? Between stress and
Stress
running.
will do that to
Yeah,
you.
it will.
Yeah.
It will. So it's an interesting time. I can laugh about it now. For a long time, we were like, don't talk about the shipyard. Like in my office, that was kind of the thing, you know?
Wow.
So I gained a lot of perspective from that one.
So a couple things on that.
Yeah.
You were talking about that was a great experience, a great learning.
I can say it's great now.
Great now.
Yes. It was awful at the
It was
time.
a big learning lesson.
Oh, I felt horrible.
You're talking about evaluating other businesses, things that you've learned.
Mm.
What would you tell somebody if they're looking at shop number 2? Like what are some things just generally you could say that you've learned and to think about mentally, and also just things to focus on?
Yeah, dude, do the diligence on yourself before you do diligence on their business. Like that is huge, right? Just having a little bit of money ain't enough. You know, you think you've got, even if you think you've got like one guy that you can plan over there, one guy is not enough. Like you really have, you know, you've taught this about, you know, human capital and, you know, having the financial stability, and then where you're at in life. Like I constantly have to ask myself, where am I going? You know, I mean, I just opened up store number 5 and I'm starting to ask myself, is there a store 7? I don't know, or store 6, or, you know, so I have to make sure that the diligence on my stuff is right. And the next 12 months are going to be at least clear enough in my world to deal with whatever I'm going to deal with. That's step number 1.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. And then step number 2 is whatever diligence I do, I always want a second opinion, because I can only speak for myself, but I'll tend to get rose-colored glasses when I see things. You know, you'll see a little bit of a dip and then you'll see it drop back or pull back up and you think, oh, it's not that big of a deal. But sometimes that thing that's not that big of a deal is a bigger deal. I want it to be. And so my desire is overtaking my intelligence. So I always have a second person go through my stuff. That's
really good.
Yeah.
What about your store 4? How did that one happen?
Store 4 was, you know, so for the first time, I did diligence on my world and decided we're ready. I actually worked that through with my coach, with Berg. And we crafted a letter that says, you know, hey, are you looking to retire? And we sent it out as a marketing piece. I knew exactly where I wanted to be. So if you look at Portland as a whole, there's the Willamette River that separates us. And I'm on the west side of things. So I have Hillsboro, Beaverton. I was in Lake Oswego. I knew that I wanted to hit Wilsonville and I wanted to hit Tigard. Both underserved, both affluent enough. They fit my where I wanted to be. But I knew I wanted to buy somebody, you know. Mm-hmm. So I just started pounding. I got it down to like these 7 potential shops, and I'd mail every month diligently. Boom, 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 boom.
Yep.
And they'd finally, you know, don't call me, don't, you know, I got it down to 4. And then one night I got a call. Hey, we got your thing. We'd like to talk to you. Nice people. They're from Thailand. They came over here in the 70s. Mom basically financed their American dream. They knew how to work on Volvos and Saabs. And so I walk in, they built this building in 1989. It's 10,000 square foot auto repair shop. Big. It's the biggest shop I own. And they're very scared, but their mom, they were actually caring for their mom, which is now my lobby. It was mom's room. Like her bed was in there. Her recliner was in there. Her TV. Yeah. She was like 93 years old. And that's their culture. They take care of the parent, right? And so it's the 2 sons out wrenching and the 2 daughters. The one daughter's the service advisor and the other daughter's the parts person. They're all the kids are in their 60s and mom's in her 90s and they're taking care of her every day. And they're just like, wow, mom has done so much for us, but we really need to take her home and care for her. We think she's, this is the last of it.
Was she like sleeping over every night there?
They would take her home in the evening, but they would bring her. So interesting, when you walk into the break room, there's this long table and this long base of cabinets. And I was going for it. They cooked for me the first night. They said, we're going to cook for you and we're going to talk about this. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And I noticed the top cabinet doors, the drawers wouldn't open up. I was like, this is weird. And they're like, oh, there used to be sinks here. So they had raised all of their kids in the auto repair shop, and they four or 2 brothers, 2 sisters, and they all had kids. And so every kid had its own sink. They bathed the kid in the sink. They did homeschooling right there in the break room. Like everything was done from this area. In fact, there's a bed upstairs because one of them has to take a nap, in between jobs. It's kind of funny. It's a whole story. But anyway, this family was just so wonderful and so warm. It's the type of shop where they knew all their clients by first name, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, it's going to be a culture shock, but okay. And they were very understanding when I did due diligence. Remember, that's the hard part. You got to come in and, I think they wanted, oh gosh, it seems like everybody wants 500 grand. It seems to be like the number. And we had to go in there and say, listen, you own this building. That's great. But, cash flow wise, we paid $125,000 for that store. And they took it, they accepted it. And then they gave me a deal on the building was to be sold 2 years later, which I just completed the sale of the building. We gave them 1.8 for the building, but they did take mom home and mom passed away. I remember mom passed away it was like 3 or 4 months before our deal had come up.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when I learned about like the estate tax thing. I didn't realize that when mom passed away, it was in their trust. And so if we did the deal after that, then they get a step up in basis. So there's no tax for them. So it was we kind of gave them a little bit of grace to let them come away without having to pay any taxes on the building.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It was neat.
And tell us about the revenue when you got it and where you got it to.
Yeah, same deal. I don't know why I get these stores that always do $40,000 a month, $40,000 a month. We do $200,000 a month out of there right now. And we did that. First year we took it really quickly from 40. It went from 40 to 100 literally within 60 days, 90 days tops. And then it lived there for a while we built our staff and tried to build up somebody that she was a very nice person. And I wanted to make her an amazing service advisor, but her heart was just a little too soft. And we realized that, and she realized that. And so once we swapped that out and put in a real strong service advisor in there, it just blew the walls off. The culture problem that we ran into is, you're doing Saabs and Volvos all the time, and then you're bringing in everything else. And the Saab and Volvo clientele still wants it to operate like the old way. And we operate like in the new way. And by the way, I still have the 2 brothers that I bought the building from and the business from. They're still in there, the Volvo tech and the Saab
crazy.
tech. So we're still working on Saabs, which is crazy to me.
Yeah, because I still own a shop that started on Saabs, and we only get 1 a month.
Oh no, I get 5 a week. And
that's crazy.
I have a 1989 Saab 9000 right now that we are putting a $10,000 motor in. I tried to say we shouldn't be doing this. Like
you had a Saab 9000 at one time, didn't you?
I sure did, with a nice turbo, upgraded turbos.
Yeah. But they're like, listen, you need to understand that these people, they've had these cars for so long, they don't like technology, they don't want it. This is their car. I'm like, okay, I am here to do whatever you want me to do. But I'm just, we're at the point where I'm like, hey, I can't even advise you. This is a good decision. But
it's not a repair, it's a restoration.
Oh, man. And they seem to live there a little bit. Yeah. So, yeah. So that's been the interesting,
That's cool, though. You got it up to $200K a month, so it's your biggest store now.
It is my physically biggest. Yeah, so we have 10 bays in there and 6 technicians. We just got to 6 technicians. We literally
and you then got a 5th store.
Yeah, and that was so this is the first time I've ever done a fresh start, ground up. There was no auto repair shop there. It was simply put, I knew I wanted to be in Wilsonville. I've always been successful in finding that underserved area. I knew when there's a demand, and then you figure out why it's underserved because it's such a pain in the rear to actually let you work on cars in whatever area it is.
Yep.
But what I like is you can't come in and compete with me. If you want to come into Lake Oswego, good luck. Nobody's going to let you work on cars there. Wilsonville's the same way. Wilsonville, I found this gorgeous building, really nice building, paid $3.35 million for this building. I knew it was a lot more than the overhead could handle, but I figured I could structure it right. And I knew that the business would grow fast. Probably not as fast as I really wanted it to. I don't think it ever goes as fast as you want it to. So, the lesson is patience. But I was in the right place at the right time. The building literally came on the market like Sunday night. I walked it on Monday. By Tuesday, I made the offer. By Wednesday, they had 2 backup offers on it. So I knew it was an in-demand building. It's just the right building, right place. We are 8 months in. We're tracking 110 this month. And then I just got a tenant it has all these executive suites. You walk into the building, it literally feels like a lawyer's office. Everything's
really nice.
Really nice. Like there was a bank in there before, and not like a traditional bank. It was they bought mortgages.
Yep.
And then they packaged them up and then sold them as securities.
Yep.
So there's 12 executive offices and there's 2 like war room style rooms.
Yeah.
Gorgeous bathrooms with showers. And I mean, it's just crazy nice. But auto repair can't use all that fancy stuff. Just the big 6,000 square foot warehouse out on back that's all gated. So
you put the shop in there.
I did. Yeah. With virtually no TIs.
And then you're leasing out the rest to somebody else.
Yes.
So you're a slumlord and a shop owner.
That's correct. You betcha. Yeah.
All right.
I did sell. I had speaking of slumlord, I had a couple rental houses along the way. So I thought that was going to be the path once too. And I did it old school, right? You buy these, ranch houses that were built in the 70s and you go in and you paint them. And I remember painting these things. I didn't have any money back then, but I held on to it for like 10, 12 years. I don't have any bad stories of people ripping out my toilets or, any of that kind of stuff. They rented, they all got, but I took 3 of those when I bought this building. I sold all 3 of them. Got rid of all my slum residential rentals, and I 1031 them into there, so I don't have those anymore.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That was good.
So now you got 5 shops, a towing company.
I do.
Had a shipyard. And you're a landlord on the commercial side, no longer on the residential side.
Correct. Yep.
Man, what a story.
Yeah.
What a story.
Such a cool journey.
Yeah. It's been wild. Yeah.
And now you're married with how many kids?
2 kids.
2 kids.
A 10-year-old and a 14-year-old.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good
awesome.
times. They're the ones. It's funny. You go through life and you go through all this business stuff and you learn a lot, but I learn way more just from being, I feel like I'm not as educated as a father as I am in business. You know what I mean? Because like your business forces you into these lessons all the time that you have to face. And then, your kids go down the road and everything's perfect until it isn't. And I'm like, oh, I'm not equipped for this. I haven't heard of this before. And we really need a coaching group for parents. That'd be fantastic.
Yes, I'll get right on that.
Yeah, I heard things about Parent Fix, Kid Fix. Yeah. We'd all appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd probably go under. Too many customers. Can't charge enough to deal with the problems coming in.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yep, for sure.
Wow. So you did get an auto repair because of a woman.
I did. Absolutely.
And now you're moving on. That's really awesome stuff. And I love the lessons learned of evaluating it and also just delivering that and providing that black and white in a way that's, you're working through it, they're working through it, and you're bringing the reality of the situation, because a lot of times those are really hard conversations to have. But just the fact that in your 5th store, you have that still culture connection with the people you bought it from, you're bringing a good relationship to it and bringing that part that you carry, which is really impactful.
You mean the 4th store?
4th store.
On store 4. Yeah.
That's awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to me that the way you viewed it all the way to the end, and how one comment from an old boss, right when you needed it, always showed up as fuel.
Yeah.
At the time, maybe it came off as kryptonite or something, but it eventually converted to "I'll show you," and I love that. I love it.
It's funny when I recall it now. I still feel it.
Yeah, you do.
I don't think about it. It's not like in my everyday.
I still remember the old guys that said very attacking things to me, and yeah, it hangs with you. It makes you bow up a little bit. You're like, I gotta fight this, because those words carry power, right? And for you to be able to go, I don't want these words to have power over me.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
Yep.
Have you seen that guy since?
No. Nope.
He's seen you.
They know of me. Yeah.
I guarantee you.
We buy a lot of parts from them. So
and he sees all your locations.
They do.
And he says, man, maybe I should have done that.
Maybe he does. Tell him
thank you for that little word of advice. Right
Go
there,
find
that
him.
Little
right?
Say there were some hard times, and that kept me going.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, dude, thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is fun. Yeah, I appreciate it, you guys.
Awesome stories, man. I really appreciate it.
You bet.